Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
My best friend and I met in college. We were roommates, and our friendship blossomed over late-night study sessions and shared dreams. She was always the romantic one, believing in true love and fairy tales. I was more practical, but I supported her through every relationship. When she met her husband at a mutual friend's wedding 6 years ago, I had never seen her happier. They seemed perfect together. He was charming, successful, and appeared completely devoted to her. They bought a beautiful house, planned for children, and seemed to be living the dream. That was until she started noticing changes in his behavior. It started with late nights at work, then secretive phone calls, and suddenly, his work phone was always face down. Classic signs really, but she didn't want to believe it. Then one day, while doing laundry, she found a receipt for a fancy restaurant in his pocket. On a night he claimed to be working late. She confronted him in their kitchen. She told him she knew about the woman from his office. He tried playing dumb, asking what she was talking about. She wasn't having it and told him not to lie, mentioning she had seen both the receipts and the messages. That's when he broke down, claiming it was a mistake and meant nothing, swearing he would end it. And like many women who want to believe in their marriage, she gave him a chance. He swore up and down it was over, even shed some tears about how sorry he was. For a month, things seemed better. Then she caught them again, this time in his car outside their favorite coffee shop. When she called me crying, I drove straight over. Through her tears, she told me she couldn't believe how stupid she'd been to believe him. I immediately reassured her that she wasn't the stupid one. He was. She then told me she wanted a divorce, and I promised to help her find the best lawyer in town. That's when things got ugly. He refused to move out, claiming he had as much right to the house as she did. She wouldn't leave either, knowing he might try to claim abandonment. So they were stuck living together while their lawyers battled it out. The audacity of this man was astounding. He actually expected her to keep doing his laundry. One evening, while we were having wine in her garden, she noticed some poison ivy growing along the fence. That's when the idea struck her. With a mischievous glint in her eye, she announced she would do his laundry after all. When I asked if she was serious, she confirmed with a wicked smile that she was very serious indeed. She carefully harvested the poison ivy, wearing gloves of course, and gave his underwear a special treatment. The first time it happened, he was convinced his affair partner had given him something. I was there when he came storming down the stairs, scratching like crazy. He was raging about suing the other woman, convinced she had given him some kind of infection. My friend just put on her most innocent face and suggested he might want to see a doctor. He ended up taking 3 oatmeal baths that week. We celebrated each one with a glass of wine. But it didn't stop there. Every few weeks, when he least expected it, she'd give his underwear another poison ivy rub down. He never figured it out, and he couldn't even tell his affair partner about it because he was too embarrassed. The divorce finally got settled when he agreed to sell the house and split the proceeds. Turns out, his affair partner dumped him when she realized he wasn't going to be as wealthy after the divorce as she thought. It seems he developed a mysterious allergic reaction to all his new underwear at his sad little bachelor apartment. My friend, she used her share of the house money to buy a beautiful condo downtown, started her own business, and recently started dating a wonderful guy who absolutely adores her. She also planted some poison ivy in her new garden. You know, just in case she needs to help another friend out someday. I'm a retired Marine Corps veteran who served for 15 years before settling down in a quiet suburban neighborhood. My military background taught me to always be prepared, especially after what happened last year. Some thugs tried to carjack me using the same method, blocking my driveway with their car while I was pulling in. They got away with my previous vehicle, a vintage 1967 Mustang that I had spent years restoring. The police never found it, or the perpetrators. After that incident, I made sure I was ready if anyone tried that again. Being a collector of military memorabilia and having the proper licenses and permits, I kept my decommissioned rocket launcher, completely legal and non-functional by the way, right next to my front door. My neighbors thought I was paranoid, but I knew better. Last week, it finally happened again. I was coming home from grocery shopping in my new car when I saw a black sedan quickly pull up behind me, blocking my driveway. Two guys jumped out, and I immediately recognized what was about to happen. My heart was racing, but muscle memory kicked in. I bolted out of my car, sprinted to my front door, grabbed my rocket launcher, and was back outside in seconds. The look on their faces when they saw me dropping to one knee and aiming that thing at them, utter shock. One of the carjackers started cursing in shock, unable to even finish his sentence when he saw what I was holding. The other one frantically screamed at his partner to get back in the car. I called out after them, warning them to remember my face and that next time I might not be in such a good mood. They scrambled back to their car so fast, one of them actually tripped and face planted on the concrete. Their tires screeched as they peeled out of my driveway, nearly hitting my mailbox in their panic to escape. My neighbor from across the street caught the whole thing on his security camera and posted it online. It went viral pretty quickly. The local police came by later that day to take my statement. The police officer questioned whether my response had been necessary. When I asked if he'd rather be taking another stolen vehicle report, he brought up the rocket launcher with obvious concern. I assured him it was registered, decommissioned, and legal, offering to show him the paperwork. The officer declined to see the documents but warned me not to cause too much panic in the neighborhood. The whole incident became the talk of the neighborhood. My next-door neighbor's kid even started calling me Rocket Man, which I have to admit is kinda growing on me. A few days later, I was working in my garage when a local news van pulled up. The reporter wanted to interview me about the viral video. The reporter asked what made me think of using a rocket launcher as a deterrent. I explained that sometimes you need to speak to criminals in a language they understand. Fear. When they asked if I was worried about legal consequences, I confidently told them I knew my rights and the law, explaining that I hadn't threatened anyone. I just held a legally owned, decommissioned piece of military equipment, and if they chose to run away, that was their decision. A week later, the police caught these guys trying the same scheme in another neighborhood. It turns out they were responsible for a string of carjackings in the area, including my Mustang from last year. They found my old car in a chop shop, completely stripped down. When they were interrogated, they actually mentioned the crazy guy with the rocket launcher and admitted they'd been avoiding our entire neighborhood ever since. The detective who called to update me couldn't stop laughing while telling me this. I still keep my rocket launcher by the door. Old habits die hard, and you never know when you might need to make a statement. Though something tells me I won't be having any more carjacking attempts in my driveway anytime soon. I'm 26 and my older sister is 34. We were pretty close despite the age gap. She always looked out for me, helped me with homework, and was there when I needed advice. So naturally, when she became a single mom to 3 kids, now 7, 4, and 2, I wanted to return the favor. At first, it started small. I'd watch the kids for a couple of hours while she went to job interviews or doctor appointments. Then it became grocery runs, then mental health breaks, and before I knew it, I was basically a second parent. Don't get me wrong, I adore those kids. The 7-year-old is a budding artist who shows me her latest masterpieces. The 4-year-old thinks I'm a superhero because I can reach the top shelf without a stool. And the 2-year-old gives the sweetest hugs. But somewhere along the line, my sister started taking advantage of my love for them. I work from home, which my sister seems to interpret as always available. Our texts are always the same pattern. She starts by asking if I'm busy, and when I tell her I'm working on a project, she immediately launches into how she needs a break because the kids are driving her crazy. When I mention my deadline, she pulls the single mom card, talking about how she never gets any time to herself. And because I feel guilty, I end up rescheduling my work or staying up late to finish it. I've missed birthday parties, canceled dates, and rescheduled client meetings more times than I can count. But last weekend was different. My best friend was turning 30, and we'd been planning this celebration for weeks. A fancy dinner at this new restaurant downtown followed by Karaoke. Something I haven't done in forever because I'm always watching the kids. I even bought a new dress and got my hair done. I was so excited. The day of the party, around 2 p.m., my sister texted asking if I was free that night. When I reminded her about my friend's birthday dinner that I had mentioned the week before, she tried to guilt me into skipping it, claiming she needed to recharge after a rough week. I explained that I couldn't cancel since I helped plan the whole thing. She replied with a passive-aggressive message about figuring something out on her own. The next evening, we had our monthly family dinner. Everyone was there, our parents, aunts, uncles, cousins. We were halfway through the main course when my sister started making snide comments. She began by saying how some people think they're too good for family these days. When I asked what she meant, she accused me of preferring to party like a teenager instead of helping my own flesh and blood. The situation escalated quickly, with her telling me I had no idea what it meant to be a real adult or understand sacrifice, claiming I just pranced around doing whatever I wanted while she was drowning. I defended myself, saying I helped her all the time, but she wouldn't listen. She accused me of abandoning her and the kids to go drinking with friends. When I reminded her it was a planned birthday dinner I told her about in advance, our mother tried to calm things down. But my sister wouldn't stop calling me irresponsible and self-centered, saying I couldn't understand what it meant to be a parent. That's when I'd had enough. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I told her she was right. I wasn't a parent because I hadn't chosen to be one. I explained that while I loved her kids, I was their aunt, not their mother, and I've been acting like an unpaid, on-call babysitter for the past year. When she tried to interrupt, I kept going, challenging her about responsibility and respect for other people's time and commitments. I told her I was done being her backup parent until she could apologize and treat me with respect. The table went silent. Our mother tried to mediate using the old family helps family line, but I wasn't having it. I told them that being family didn't mean letting someone walk all over me, and while I loved them all, this situation wasn't healthy for anyone. I left the dinner early that night. In the following days, my sister sent countless texts accusing me of abandoning her and the kids, calling me selfish, and reminding me of all she'd done for me. My mother called multiple times, trying to guilt me into backing down. But here's the thing. After standing my ground for 2 weeks, something interesting happened. My sister showed up at my apartment one morning, kids in tow. The little ones ran to hug me while she stood awkwardly in the doorway. She finally admitted hesitantly that maybe she hadn't been fair to me. It wasn't a full apology, but it was a start. We had a long talk about boundaries, respect, and expectations. She admitted she'd been taking advantage of my help, and I admitted I should have spoken up sooner. We agreed on a schedule. I'd watch the kids 2 set days a week, but she'd need to give me at least 48 hours notice for any additional requests. These days, our relationship is slowly healing. The kids still get to see their favorite aunt, but on terms that work for everyone. And most importantly, I finally got to go to karaoke last weekend. Turns out I'm still terrible at it, but at least now I have the freedom to be terrible whenever I want. For 3 years, I helped hundreds of customers find relief through Medical Mary Jane, and most of them were wonderful people. But there's always that one person who makes your job harder than it needs to be. I started working there shortly after losing my mom. She was only 46 when cancer took her, and I was 19. We weren't just mother and daughter, we were best friends. She was the kind of mom who'd stay up late helping me with school projects, who'd surprise me with my favorite snacks during exam week, and who knew exactly what to say when my first boyfriend broke my heart. After she passed, I threw myself into work. The dispensary job came at the perfect time. Helping people find natural relief for their pain gave me purpose, and most days I could almost forget the ache in my own heart. Almost. There were 3 days each year I always requested off: Mother's Day, my mom's birthday, and Christmas. My co-workers understood, and my manager was usually great about it. But last Mother's Day was different. We were short-staffed, just me and my manager, and she wanted to spend the day with her mom. How could I say no? I knew how precious those moments were. That's when she walked in. This middle-aged woman I'll call Karen. She'd been a regular customer for about a year, and something about her always set my teeth on edge. Maybe it was her condescending tone or the way she acted like she knew more about our products than we did. Her husband usually tagged along, quiet and apologetic looking, like he was used to cleaning up her social messes. As soon as she saw me, Karen started questioning why I was working on Mother's Day instead of being with my mom. When I tried to brush it off by saying I was just helping out, she pressed further, asking if I'd at least called my mother. I quietly told her I hadn't, hoping she would drop the subject. But Karen wouldn't let it go. She started lecturing me about what kind of daughter doesn't call their mother on Mother's Day, saying she would be heartbroken if her daughter treated her that way. Her husband tried to intervene, softly suggesting they should stop, but Karen cut him off. She continued her tirade, demanding to know if I'd even bothered to get my mother a card or a gift. I could feel the tears building up. My hands were shaking as I tried to bag their items. The fluorescent lights suddenly seemed too bright and the store felt too small. 3 years of customer service had taught me to keep my composure, but this was different. This was about my mom. Karen kept going, criticizing young people today for being self-centered, telling me that the least I could do was pick up the phone since my mother had brought me into this world. Something inside me snapped. 10 years of grief, of missing her voice, her hugs, her laugh, it all came rushing to the surface. I looked up, meeting Karen's eyes directly for the first time. With all the pain and anger I'd been holding back, I told her that I would love to call my mom, that I'd give anything to call my mom, but she had been dead for 10 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Karen's face went from smug to shocked to ash-white in seconds. Her husband looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him whole. Karen tried to stammer out a response but couldn't form the words. I went on, telling her bluntly that my mother was 46 when she died, I was 19, and that every Mother's Day since then, I'd visited her grave instead of making phone calls. Then I asked about their payment method, trying to end the transaction as quickly as possible. Her husband quickly pulled out his credit card while Karen stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. As I handed them their receipt, her husband apologized profusely for both of them. They hurried out, Karen for once completely silent. Through the store window, I could see her husband gesturing animatedly as they walked to their car, probably giving her the lecture she deserved. Word must have gotten around because Karen never came back to our store. Some of our regular customers who knew her mentioned they'd seen her at other dispensaries in town. Apparently, she'd tell people about the terrible experience she had at our store, but when pressed for details, she'd quickly change the subject. My manager found out what happened from another customer. The next day, she changed the schedule so I'd never have to work another Mother's Day again. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.